Here we are. We've done a Google search. We're looking for tips and tricks on how to raise a child, and you've stumbled across this video. I've insinuated that there are 8 steps. Boy gosh, I wish I was right. There are so many steps to consider. Even if you do break it down into 8 top headings that all have a myriad of different steps, it's confusing. I'm sure you were as confused as I when you did your YouTube search to figure out what are the best ways to do the kinds of things that we call raising a child. I made this video because what's dear to my heart is the nuance that we can build healthy families that have at the core at least 2 parents that love each other, nurture each other, understand each other, and that care for each other's progress in life as well as parents. Not to mention those co-parenting relationships, those blended families, and the fallout that can occur when you don't have great skills for maintaining good communication, an understanding of how to make decisions together, and ideally having the children's best interest at heart, not just yourself. So when we go through the process of figuring out what's great for the child, it's often with the nuance of what's great for me. What do I feel is really important for the child? And that comes through the conditioning of our life up until the time we became parents. There was no owner's manual that came out the womb with the child. There was no real solid education process growing up for myself. Can't speak for others, but that was exactly what happened for me. It was a situation of falling in love after finding that special someone who made you feel like nothing on earth could ever come between you. It was getting married or forming a union and hanging out together long enough to make the decision that it was time to make a baby. Then that's the time when things started to instill as being real. You've got the pregnancy, you've got all the things that you're supposed to have, and you've got the fights that come along with it. Do I buy the $200 stroller because I'm on a budget, or do I buy the $3,000 stroller because I want to look like I'm a good parent? Make no mistake, the function of these 2 items is exactly the same. It's all about the ego when it comes to these kinds of things. And people have fights over this constantly. What are the 2 things that parents mainly fight about? Number 1 is money. Number 2 is how to do stuff. I can't tell you enough that having gone through these kinds of series of events for the last 8 years as being a dad has driven me directly towards what is a better way. And if you're here, I'm sure you're looking for a better way too. So I've worked out a few things, a lot of time in research, a lot of time in listening, and a lot of time, and this is the number 1 thing I'd invite you to do when raising a child, is self-reflection. How do I do things? Does it work? What doesn't work, and how can I change it? Here are some really easy things that you could look into in order to create a great life experience for you, your partner, and your children. Communication. How do I speak to my child? How do I speak to myself? How do I speak to my family? More often than not, you're doing things wrong that you don't see.
What's going on?
And that's totally cool, but when you reflect, you begin to understand what you're doing well, what you're not doing so well, and how to change it. This comes through having an open mindset. So if you think you've got it down pat, click off, I'm sure you're doing great. But if you're concerned about the way things are going and you'd like different outcomes, delve deep into the way that you communicate.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the captain and the entire crew, welcome to London Heathrow Terminal 4. Local time now is just approaching 9 o'clock.
This will pass straight into the child. The way that you communicate with them, teach them how to communicate, is going to have a great effect on their life. It's going to have an effect on their professional life, on their social life, and in their familial life into the future when they do indeed decide to have their own family. Other skills which weren't taught to me, which I really wish were in terms of parenting: literacy, numeracy, yeah, for myself, but how to teach that to a child, that's a whole different ballgame. Exercise, nutrition, health, wellness, hygiene, general practices of the everyday life. They just were not taught. They were taken for granted. This is how you do it, not necessarily this is why you do it. And of course, we've got different children in our house. They've got different methods, different standards, different levels of doing things. How do you bring that all together? It's really difficult. So have some frameworks, a general guide of how to wash your hands, how to sit at the table, how to speak to each other, how to feed yourself so that you've got the right kinds of nutrients in your body so that your brain works functionally and you can learn if and when you do go to school, for example. Some other great key aspects to life: emotional intelligence, financial literacy, These things were not taught to me, and I suffered greatly in my adulthood in both of those areas. Only at 41 years of age, I'm really starting to think, hey, this is super important, more so than, hey guys, you should do this. It's more like, if you don't do this, your life is gonna suck. That's the kind of messaging that I'm hearing now, because we've got a society which is impacted heavily by corporations, is heavily impacted by social media, and we all just trying to work out how to survive, how to keep our family healthy, how to keep ourselves healthy. And this all comes from one little thing that I've seen a lot online in the literature, and it's to do with mental health. It's to do with the cohort of people within society that I'm a member, and that's a male aged between 60 and 45. These guys are the biggest target bracket for things like suicide and depression. Women's depression is on the incline too, so I started thinking, what's the problem? And it's not the disease or the disorder, that's the symptom. The problem is we're not operating well. We're not living out our best lives. Heck, we're not even living out 50% of what we could be achieving. When we grew up, when we were growing up, they asked us, what would you like to be when you were fully grown? Would you like to be an astronaut, a fireman, a policeman, a doctor? What is it? None of us. Okay, some of us did make it to that. Some of us didn't. I never planned on being a chef. I'm so happy that I am because I have the love of food. Maybe the writing was on the wall, and because I was always involved in food, I should have just been pushed towards food early. There was no real outcome in mind. There was no real outcome for anything. It was more or less jump into this area of life, whether it be early childhood, where you're just learning those baby steps, how to crawl, how to walk, how to talk, and all of these kinds of things. There was no real structure to the play. I remember really early on in a couple of different kids' lives, they were the children of my music teachers. Two amazing humans, great at their work. The mother, she really instilled a sense of what it is to be a parent, because before school age, those children could speak 3 different languages. They could recite maths in those languages, and all I heard them do were basic, repetitive activities such as, I'll say what you need to say, then you repeat it. And I was blown away at how easy that system was. She definitely had an outcome for her kids, which was, we're learning plus and minus, we're learning times tables, and we're learning it in Japanese, English, and French, which were the household languages that they had. Bloody mind-blowing. Years later, I'm having my own kids, and that has stuck in my mind as being so great. My dad did it the same. He gave me the book. It had maths timetables in it. I'd go to my room, I'd study the times tables, I'd come out, I'd be tested. If I got the answers right, it made me feel great. If I got the answers wrong, I'd go back to my room, relearn, come back and test again. That process was amazing for my thoughts. It made me feel like I could do stuff. It made me think that I was special in some way. And I feel like when it comes to being a parent, we have the opportunity to instill these really simple processes that have an absolutely dramatic result in the future. As a result now, my desire to learn and have that specialness is still here. And it's greatly exacerbated by the concept of me being able to make my own decisions and discern whether or not I want to follow through with whatever it is that I want to do. I like making videos, I like kissing my kids, I like playing Mario Brothers, I like cooking food, and I take all of those little things and I structure them in a fun way that also breeds education for the kids into the future. So if you're thinking about having kids, or you've got kids right now, no doubt you've got a myriad of decisions to make, and a lot of frustrations have built up due to a difference of opinion between yourself and your partner, difference of opinion from that TED Talk to this TED Talk to that article. You don't know what to do, that's totally cool. Have those frameworks that I read out earlier, whether it's the exercise, the nutrition, organizing your space, sleep hygiene, general hygiene, learning activities, fun activities. Have those frameworks in place. You discern what is the outcome that you want. Do you want them to be happy and healthy? Well, how do you do it? Get to researching. Put down the system that you want to put into place. Test it. Test it daily. How do you do a test? Well, it's really simple. You teach your kids, How to say please and thank you. I want this is not going to go. Is not okay. You have to say, Mummy, Daddy, can I please have a glass of water? To which the answer will be yes, and then they get the water and they say thank you. On the next go, they might forget. You have to remind them. Practice the formula as opposed to just letting them get away with it. That repetitiveness instills into their brain, it becomes autonomous. So they go from being automatic to thinking, what do I have to do based on your feedback? And then that new behavior becomes automatic in a positive way. So back to the process of having the children. You're in love, the pregnancy woes have kicked in. Which stroller do I get? Individually, you're going through your own grief process. And you've worked out it's the end of your life. You're at loggerheads as to how you're going to get through this and you can't see a future down the track. Fear not. This is the emotional response to any difficulty or trauma. We all think that life's going to stay the same when it's in good times or in bad times. When it's in bad times, it seems like it's the worst of the worst. Nothing can be done about it, and we're stuck. Well, that'd be your fixed mindset. That'd be our fixed mindset. I'd invite you to think, hey, did you have an outcome in mind? The chances are, no, you didn't have an outcome in mind. Well, let's think about that outcome. Let's think about what kind of life you'd like to live with your family. And not just the big stuff, but the small stuff, where you come home every day and you feel like, oh, I'm in the right spot. Where your children could be going crazy, but you know you've got a framework to dissolve that crazy and to build a bond and nurture them through those troublesome times. You might get out of shape as you get older. You're not as strong or as fit or aesthetic as you once were, and your love life starts to devolve. Well, there's things in place all around us all the time that we can do about that. It starts with a walk. It starts with some advice from a health coach, fitness coach, a doctor, a physiotherapist, using the tools for the right application. Oh, I injured my knee when I was a child and I can't run anymore. Well, there's things around that too. You go see a fitness professional, figure out where you can move, where you're not moving so well, and how to move better. That might be a personal trainer or an exercise physiologist. The trick is to think that you can, not to think I can't. That negative self-limiting belief type of idea is for those who have at their heart the fear of failure. Those who say they can and those who say they can't are both right. The concept of conscious parenting is so important for me because divorce rates are high and they don't seem to be slowing down. And I feel that's unfair. It's unfair to ourselves as parents, married couples. It's unfair to the children. There was a time when that didn't really happen. And you've got to think, why is it that this is the scenario now? Why are we so willing to blame the other person and leave rather than take a look at the big picture? Having looked back at my own past, I realized there were things that I could have prevented. Yeah, sure. I can't prevent everything. And that's not the goal. The goal is to have a conscious outlook to what you're doing, a conscious outlook to what other people are doing, and see if we can mesh them together. If you can't mesh them together, it's fine, but you gave it a go. And that's the trick. Giving it a go and seeing what's possible. Having the idea that you can, if you really want to. Not just to wipe it off the face as an opportunity before you've even tried. One of the biggest challenges I faced as a young child was spending time with my parents. I had a lot of extracurricular activities, so grateful for them. They taught me a lot of cool things. I had a lot of experiences, made a lot of friends, that kind of stuff. But I didn't really get the quality time with my dad that I'd always wanted. I didn't realize this till I was an adult. And I didn't realize that a lot of families are having this problem. Their dads go to work, they work long hours, they're not often emotionally available and mentally available when that work time is finished because they're tired. They've got other things that they've got to focus on in their own life. They've got their own stresses, and it's difficult to come home after a long day at work and mesh with the kids. I'm sure it's the same for the mums too, but what I've witnessed is that mums are really involved in their kids. They're the ones who sacrifice their career the most. They're the ones who sacrifice their emotional state in order to be with the kids. And I've got to say hats off to that. Me, I like to do a bit of both. I like to work and I like to be at home with the kids. It's a priority. I can't do both, unfortunately. You know, as a middle-class guy, I've got to choose. Do you stay at home and have no money? Or do you try and balance it where you go to work, have some money? Yes, you do have those stresses, but you come home and absolutely demote those stresses through different practices like non-sleep deep rest, ice baths, cold showers, breathing exercises, meditation, Reiki, these kinds of things, and then have some energy in the tank to play and love and nurture your children. One of the things I love most right now is being together with my partner and my children at the same time. It feels great to know that you're doing something just regular everyday stuff, whether it's playing cards, watching a movie, scratching a back or massaging, and you're enjoying each other's energy. Not to mention those nighttime winter fires with a toasted marshmallow, which you've seen in my other videos. These are great examples of how to switch off, get away from your telephone, get away from the TV, and enjoy each other's company. This is a skill that I see as being lost. We're so dopamine affected. We're so media affected. We're so attracted to the videos and the bright colors and the lights. We're finding difficult to connect with each other on that simple level. I was born in a time where these things didn't really exist, and TV was far less addictive than it is now. So I've got to be grateful for that. But if you're having kids in the modern era, as a millennial or a Zoomer, they've got the internet, mobile phones, mobile devices, and all of those high contrast videos from the get-go. How are you going to keep interacting with them rather than lose them to the matrix of the media? So start early, start from the beginning. Get rid of the devices. You might lose sleep because they haven't got something to zone in, zone out while you're trying to recuperate. Learn how to breathe. Learn how to be resilient to the stress. Don't outsource your parenting to the TV or the video. In fact, grow with that process. If you made the decision to have a child, make the decision to raise them adequately. In fact, beyond adequately. Make the decision to grow yourself, regardless of whether you want to do it or not. Think, must I do it? The answer is yes. We all do this. And what can happen? Prevention of youth crime, addiction, suicide, divorce, all of these modern day symptoms that come with living a high-paced, fast life built around technology, substances, and material wealth. I'm not saying that material wealth isn't good. It totally is. But it comes as a consequence of losing connection with each other. When we connect with each other, we feel happy. We feel loved. Yes, we do have disagreements. We do say things we shouldn't. And that's why the process of reflection is so important, so that you can reflect on yourself, stop blaming them for the retaliation, and start acknowledging the responsibility that you both have to interact with each other in a loving, nurturing kind of way. Yes, a little bit utopian. I'm just talking about all the cool stuff and the good stuff. Because why? Because there is enough bull stuff out there telling you how bad life is, how hard life is. I really want to impact you to believe that it's possible, that you can have that loving, nurturing relationship with your kids that maybe you didn't have with your parents.